One Friday, driving back from the city after a long week of commuting, I got to thinking about my consumption habits, and it kind of freaked me out. Let me explain what I mean. So my name's Stuart, and let's say I lived to the age of 75. I estimated that in my lifetime, I will use 325 pairs of underwear, 425 pairs of socks, 563 toothbrushes, 375 t-shirts, 34 rain jackets, 112 pairs of shoes, 9,125 wash loads, 6,083 dryer loads, 19,150 takeout coffees, 3,910 takeaways, 23,400 yogurt pots, 15,600 loads of dishes, 11,700 plastic bags, 400 bins of landfill, 1,300 bins of recycling, and a lifetime not fully understanding the implications of all those very convenient items or activities. Okay, this is a little concerning. I didn't quite realise to what extent we had an addiction to plastic. And therefore I think I'm going to give myself a bit of a challenge. As of tomorrow morning, I'm going to try and go plastic free for 24 hours and just see if it's actually possible, which I don't know if it is, but we'll see. It's all plastic. Time for cereal. Well, that was a stupid idea. Plastic, 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 plastic. Used a lot of plastic. This is really hard. This was a total fail. I need some help. And that help will come in the form of my friend, Anna Pasaka, head of the plastics lab at Oceanwise.
Hey, Anna.
Hi, Stuart.
You ready to go?
Ready, let's do this.
I've heard there's a big hill initially.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like the sound of it, to be honest. I always forget about the mountain part of the mountain biking, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, this looks good. So why did you start working with plastics?
Plastics is a material that's deeply embedded in our society. While it offers many advantages to our modern way of life, it also puts pressure on our environment.
Well, look at this. All that hard work paid off, huh? So going on an activity like this, like going for a bike ride with a friend, you want to feel like you're getting away from things like plastic, technology, etc. But are we still surrounded by plastic? Am I encased in plastic?
We definitely brought a lot of plastic with us. So even our clothing, our shoes, our water bottles, the wrappers from the energy bars, all of those are examples of the items that have plastics. So plastics have certainly helped us with food preservation, more comfort in terms of clothing. So it's important to recognize that it's not a bad material per se. It's the fact that the way we produce and consume and manage plastics is creating challenges for our oceans and for our environment.
So when I go on this journey, am I going to be able to find people in BC who care enough about this issue?
I'm confident that you'll find many wonderful people working locally to better the environment through innovation around plastic packaging and recycling and social behavioral change and so on. So there's a lot of great people working on the issue, and I'm actually quite excited and energized by the idea that there are a lot of us who want to make change. It's just that the problem in a number of ways is quite large and complex. So sometimes solutions are not very straightforward.
Let's go find these people in this forest we're in.
Born in the 1980s, I can't remember a world without plastic, but I also can't remember where our addiction to plastic came from. So that's my first question. Why did plastic become such a big part of our lives?
Plastic really became popular in the 1950s, and with it was this whole culture of convenience that emerged. And so with plastic, it is a relatively new thing, but the damage that it's done in the last number of decades will go on for decades and decades to come.
Well, I think the utility of plastics has really driven the explosion in ingenuity in products. We've seen lots of things that used to be made of metal, and now they're virtually all plastic. So there have been a number of developments in terms of innovation and design that has allowed for incredible creativity. The problem, though, is that the convenience factor is driving an issue in terms of the environmental cost.
In 2017, the UN declared plastic pollution a global crisis. The largest producers of single-use plastic are the major fast-moving consumer goods companies. And that's really where most people are interacting with the bulk of single-use plastic in their daily lives. And most of the single-use plastic that comes into someone's house comes from their daily or weekly grocery shop.
When people are shopping for groceries, the average Canadian ends up wasting about 25% of the groceries that they buy. So imagine walking out of a grocery store with 4 bags of groceries and you just leave one in the parking lot. That's roughly the amount of food that the average family is wasting just because it doesn't get eaten or it goes bad. One of the simplest things you can do is to pause and take a look and try to understand what are the items in there that you might be throwing out or recycling the most of.
That sounds like good advice. I've decided to uncover the plastic I have in my kitchen.
Here we have all of our fridge goods, so our consumable goods, things that come quickly into our house and quickly out. So that includes our vegetables, that includes our dairy products, that includes our fruit products. And then here we have all our dried goods, so we have flour, our sugar, our rice, our pasta, everything seems to come in plastic. And the scariest part is that this plastic is in my life for maybe a month at most. And every couple of weeks, me and my wife think we're doing great because we have a full recycling bin to be taken away. And that feels awesome. But I'm not sure if that's the right feeling to have with recycling.
According to a report from Recycle BC, the amount of plastic recovered from the recycling process is 46%. This is in comparison to metal at 73%, paper at 83%, and glass at 87%, showing how much the recovery of plastic lags behind the other recyclable goods.
Recycling. Once it's in the blue box, out of sight, out of mind, from my perspective, we're not there. The recycling system in Canada is really only recycling a small percentage of the plastics that are being used and disposed of, and the blue box system varies across municipalities. There are different recycling systems across Canada. There's no national framework. And even when you have a nice, easy to recycle beverage bottle, that product might be recyclable, but that doesn't mean it's going to hold another bottle of pop in the future.
Recycling has definitely become a myth. From when we were young in Canada, or when I've been growing up, if you put your item in your blue bin, then you're definitely doing your part to save the planet. But what we've learned, particularly over the last number of years, is that that is just not the case.
So if that's not the case, then what am I to do? Perhaps Lindsay Coulter, the Queen of Green, will give me an idea.
Recycling feels really good. It really feels like you're part of the solution, but what often is forgotten is it's at the bottom of the pyramid. So it's the thing you do last. First you reduce, then you reuse things, and now we have so many other R's, like refuse and reclaim and refurbish. There's so many things we can be doing before recycling. So the solution is to recycle less, actually.
I think you're perfectly right. So when people fill up their blue bin, they feel good.
And then there's even wish cycling. So people have that blue bin, and there's things you might not be sure if they get taken for recycling or not, and you just kind of toss it in there, and it's called wish cycling. The goal isn't to have a heaping blue bin on recycling day, but it's actually to see if you can cut back how much you're taking to the curb all the time.
It is so hard for a consumer to figure out what to do. There's just so much inconsistency. Even if they are following all the rules, checking the websites, totally doing everything that they can, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, most of that plastic is not being recycled, and then it's also ending up in the environment.
Right, so we're confused. It's confusing. I'm off to meet Dr. Jiaying Zhao, who has an insight into why our waste collection system is so confusing.
So as you travel in and out of different jurisdictions, the sorting guidelines change, and that's not convenient. If I can change policies in one way, I would call for standardization of waste policies. just standardize recycling guidelines across different cities and jurisdictions so people know what to do consistently.
And how is the public meant to be aware of that?
You wouldn't unless you look up the guidelines. You have to go to the City of Vancouver website to find out, is this recyclable?
Which isn't convenient.
Which is not convenient at all.
So what advice would you give to a family to educate their children about waste?
Experience, and there's two ways to do that. One is to help your children understand the interconnection with life. This is really easy. Take them out into nature, experience more wonder, more mystery, awe, and beauty.
Mommy, this is my favorite. It's yum, yum, yum.
Forest is nice, isn't it? It gives us nice treats.
Yum, yum, yum.
What's this one?
No,
It's a goose. Oh, there's a bear right there.
a teddy bear. I'm not scared of bear.
No, we don't need to be scared. We just need to thank you, Mr. Bear, for coming to say hello this morning. It was nice to see him, wasn't it? We're very lucky.
Second thing would be to go visit your local landfill. It's a really powerful experience to see where a way is. So maybe your kids help you with your chores, they know about recycling, they know about composting, but take them to then where does that truck go when it leaves your neighborhood? And it's really powerful to just see what happens to everything at the end. So every time we make garbage, right, goes in the truck, and then this is where the truck brings it. I think you were gonna be 30 years old when this landfill is full. There'll be nowhere or garbage to go. We gotta make less garbage, right?
Recycling may not be the best option, but it's much better than throwing our items in the landfill. I'm off to meet with the Squamish District Council to see if the recycling systems we have in place are working, or if the public are still irresponsibly disposing of recyclable goods.
Are you familiar with Recycle BC's categories?
The 1 to 7? The numbers? No, tell me.
So, we have our laminated film, which if you do the thumb test, it's not going to go through.
Yeah.
We have the gable tops here. You have the old corrugated cardboard, so you know it's old corrugated.
Yes.
You have the peat,
Yep.
one styrofoam, and bottles.
Yes.
Okay, time to see how this convenient landfill system is used when we forget about our trash as soon as it goes in the can.
So this one in here.
Yeah.
So this one we put our thumb through.
Yeah.
So that will go in here.
Yeah.
Wow, styrofoam. The first, everything could have been recycled. What's that? Jam? A whole jar of jam. Glass. So that, in theory, should be rinsed and cleaned and recycled. Oh my goodness, diapers. That's a whole documentary in itself, I think. There's more diapers. I could keep going. I could keep going. There's like a lot of diapers. So the reason people don't do a good job at this, I suppose, is because it's confusing.
Definitely. I think the will is there for sure.
Yeah.
But it's not easy for people. I mean, it has to be convenient for people to actually follow through and do it.
Convenience. That word just keeps on coming up. This landfill, it seems to be the product of our convenience.
A large amount of this can be recycled. The amount of plastic I see in this is insane. This is like a sea of plastic. There's some tires that could all be recycled. There's some paper that can be all recycled. Tin. There's so much stuff that if we just took a moment to understand that it doesn't go in the landfill, it'll make a huge difference. And the worst bit about it is I'm totally responsible for this. This is probably some of my trash, you know? I live 2 minutes that way. Like 100% some of my crap from my house is here. And in 2027, this will be full. And then we'll just dig up somewhere else and put our stuff there, I suppose.
With such a short-sighted approach to plastic, it's painful for me to think of a world that our grandchildren might be born into and what our convenient culture is leaving behind.
Just to hold your 4 cans together, this is now going to sit here in this landfill for the rest of our lifetime. Drink responsibly, kids.
Constitutions are meant to reflect the national soul of the country. And in Canada, protection of the environment is not part of our national soul yet.
I'm with Terry Lynn Williams-Davidson, a Canadian Indigenous lawyer who has a vision of what is currently missing in Canadian environmental law.
There's not a constitutional right to a clean environment in Canada. There is legislation to protect aspects of the environment, like protection of salmon habitat, but there is no right to a clean environment. The Western legal system is built on this idea that people have rights and not necessarily responsibilities married to those rights. In the Indigenous worldview and the Haida worldview, we have privileges that can be taken away if responsibilities are not met. And so what's missing in Western legal systems is the marriage of rights to responsibility and the idea that you don't necessarily have something that you can defend and fight for without fulfilling responsibilities.
Canada is a land of rich and meaningful resources, and we need to be responsibly aware of how fragile those resources are. I'm on my way to meet Tanya Otero from the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup to witness firsthand the garbage that is washing up from our oceans.
Okay, so we've been on the beach for 5 minutes, and I've found some glass, which is super dangerous for kids. Any child would cut themselves easily on that glass, adult as well, doesn't need just with children. I found a beanie, a toque, as you would call it in Canada, I don't know who that is, some paper, and a piece of plastic.
When I first moved to BC, I was overwhelmed by how clean and pristine this landscape appeared. But if you look a little bit closer, it doesn't quite seem to be the case.
You know, the shorelines and beaches here in BC are very clean. And, you know, at first glance, that's definitely the case. But the closer you look, the more you see the tiny pieces of trash that are very harmful to the wildlife and the ecosystems that we all enjoy. Some of the most common items that are found are cigarette butts, tiny plastic pieces and foam, straws, food wrappers, paper. When you do look at the Dirty Dozen, you'll find that there's a common thread, and that majority of the items are single-use plastic items that we're using out of convenience. So if we want to see a correlation, I think we don't need to look too deeper than that.
Community cleanups have become just a regular thing in our lives. That alone is just baffling to think about. While the producers keep producing the plastic, it is people in British Columbia that have to be cleaning up the problem, literally. And I think that that's what the government needs to really be thinking about. Like funding beach cleanups? No, like stop the problem at the source.
Such a good point. It's like everyone feels good about being part of beach cleanups, but they shouldn't even exist in the first place.
Yeah.
That should be the aim, that no one needs to do
no one ever needs to do a beach cleanup ever again. And also, I shudder to think of what our oceans are going to be like in the next 20 years if we don't take the action that we know we can take right now.
I'm traveling to Vancouver Island to meet with Christina Mittermeier, a National Geographic contributing photographer and co-founder of Sea Legacy.
It shouldn't be called Earth, it should be called ocean, because 70% is covered by water. And when we think about the water in the ocean, people imagine it's just water, but in reality, it's a living broth. It is a microscopic rainforest that's creating the oxygen we breathe. And so when we think about the Amazon rainforest burning down to the ground and that being terrifying, what's happening in the oceans is equally terrifying, but it's invisible. We don't see it. I think for me, one of the most poignant moments in my career was working in the west coast of Africa in a little coastal community. I was walking on the beach one day and I turned a corner and I saw this massive landfill right on the ocean and a dumpster truck backing out to the edge of the cliff and dumping its entire load right into the water. And I remember thinking, it doesn't matter how many plastic bags we ban here or how many straws we stop using. Unless we stop the systemic introduction of plastics into the system, this is going to continue. Plastic industry indoctrinated us into believing that recycling is our responsibility. They made it our problem. That's wrong, you know? They create the product, they need to clean it up.
The borders we've invented only create an illusion of separation. But the evidence of our collective impact doesn't know any borders. And that evidence is sometimes so small that it's easy to ignore.
We've been looking into the issue of microplastics since 2014. There's still so much to learn because it's a relatively new contaminant. We know that synthetic materials last a long time, and when they're very small, they can disperse a lot easier than maybe larger plastics.
Microplastic It's a catch-all definition for anything of any shape, size, color, or chemistry that's synthetic, less than 5 millimeters in size.
We know that they've penetrated the entire marine ecosystem, and once they're very small, they're very difficult to remove.
And what did you find on that first beach cleanup?
Well, I went to the far end of the beach and I found a lot of plastic pellets mixed in with the wood and rock and other plastic bits. So I started doing my own research with a colleague, and we found that our oceans are being choked with plastic pellets. These are coming from plastics industry, and there are a number of plastic manufacturing facilities up and down the Fraser River. A lot of focus is spent on the consumer, but let's put some focus on the industry that is contributing to the problem. So we can either choose to deal with this issue now, or we can push this off to a future generation until somebody is going to have no choice but have to deal with it. And that's a very selfish way to live.
Where we are right now is called Huayawachin, which in our language means facing the wind. This was one of our summer villages. Since about 1972, we have not been able to harvest clams or mussels or oysters because the inlet is too polluted. Listening to our elders and our aunties and uncles, one of their wishes was to have a spot here where we could harvest those foods once more.
We have a bunch of archaeological sites, and one of our sites has a 400-year history of our shellfish consumption. And it shows kind of that consistency over 400 years that we were taking from the inlet, but we were never taking too much, and we were leaving behind stuff for future generations. It's our culture, it's our way of being, and that is tied to the health of the inlet. When the lands and waters are sick, we relate that to us being sick as well, because we are part of this cycle, and we're not separate away from our environment. We are a part of our environment. And so I think that is something that's really important to us, as we always look forward towards the next 7 generations and ensuring that what we're leaving today will be good enough for the next 7 generations.
It has been said, we do not inherit the earth from our parents, we borrow it from our children. Having children has helped me see things from a different point of view. My simple day-to-day choices have an impact that goes beyond my lifetime. I'm off to meet Dr. Peter Ross, VP of Research at OceanWise, to find out a little bit more about a common household activity that is having major consequences on our oceans.
Plastics have emerged to become a global issue of concern to basically to everyone. The average Canadian is responsible for 3 to 4 times their own body weight in plastics every single year. I'd say all Canadians are connected to the oceans. All of our toilets and washing machines and sinks are connected to the ocean. So this is an issue that is topical for everyone in Canada.
So, for people who do not know about this, tell me about the filtration system we have in our washing machines currently.
We don't have a filtration system in our washing machine currently. So all of those synthetic contaminants that are being produced during home laundry are being taken directly into wastewater treatment plant facilities, or can be directly discharged into a watershed, a water body, if there's no treatment at all.
People might think, oh, I'll just wash my fleece. But in fact, a single fleece sweater could lose as much as 10 or 12 million fibers in a single load of laundry. And increasingly, clothing will be synthetic. It will be based on petrochemicals. And so I think if I look at fast fashion, people are shopping for more. In some ways, that's a good news story economically, but it's got to be sustainable. We found among 37 different products, there was a 1,000-fold difference from low to high in the shed rate, which means to me that there are significant opportunities to design better clothing.
Why then in the textile industry is it so difficult to design things sustainably?
It's really easy to not do the sustainability bit, and I've worked at brands previously where we didn't, and life seemed more straightforward. Whether it's the pieces going into the product, the people that are making it, the way we're making it, really you can unpeel that onion.
With that many layers, therefore, is it very difficult to get perfect?
Yeah.
Well, I can imagine so.
Nigh on impossible.
It is so complicated and so convoluted, it blows my mind. You'll have things designed in one area, manufactured in another. It maybe has to sit in a port for 6 months. Then you'll have a dye house in one area where they do all the dyeing. They'll ship it over here to have it cut, then they'll ship it over here to get it sewn, then they'll be selling it over here. It's a spider web of globalization.
And that's just the supply network. When you consider what actually goes into our clothing, it's even more unsustainable.
When we look at the amount of chemistry that goes into making a product, there is a lot of it. Whether it's something that seems relatively simple, like the color. If you go to a dye facility, they might have 50, 100 different chemical formulations, each of those chemical formulations with a whole range of substances in them to try to develop the color.
Everyone wants durable waterproof repellency on their jackets. That's a layer of chemicals on your jacket. So we need to tell people about these things, that these plastic or versions of plastic and chemicals almost touch everything that we consume.
The soft goods industry is very polluting, and so we're just trying to learn and recognize that we're part of the problem. And so that factor of making it more responsible for the planet is just a very real consideration now. And in fact, it's like the driving thing behind innovation. Why does that matter? Why does making good stuff matter? You can go back all the way to the end of the Great Depression when there was actually this thing called designed obsolescence, where you design things to not last a long time. So since the 40s and 50s, there's been this multiple generations who've just come to expect that their stuff doesn't last. It's weird to think now you're gonna buy something and have it for the rest of your life. But 100 years ago, that was totally normal.
Well, 100 years ago, people weren't wearing plastic. They were wearing natural fibers. But it seems nowadays natural fibers are considered luxury items.
There is that perception out there, and some of it is valid. When you're buying organic clothing or fair trade clothing, it simply costs more to make those items. But those are items that people are going to have in their wardrobe for the next 10 years.
Some of our customers already get it, but there's plenty that don't yet, and they require quite a bit of education. I mean, I relate it back to food. More than ever, people are buying organic food, and it just takes people to understand the difference between organic and non-organic. I think it's similar for clothing. Once people start to understand, like, oh, if I wear this plastic clothing, what impact is that having on the planet, but also on myself?
Sustainability is really a value system. Some people are going to be more focused on the chemistry aspect. Some people are more interested about the greenhouse gas impact. And then, social. We're just talking about environment right now, but also the entire spectrum of social issues that also play into sustainability.
Western economies, our consumption is contributing to the emissions and waste accumulation and all these issues. I don't think we can just say consumers don't worry about it. Consumers are the ones who vote in the politicians. They're the ones who can call for political action. They're the ones who are supporting with their wallets and their investments. They're saying what we value and what we want to encourage.
I think we don't know the power that we have. And if we, as consumers, sort of flexed our muscles, I think it would be shocking how much power we actually have over the companies that we support.
Individually, we each have a responsibility to consider the impact that we have on the planet and what changes we can make, whether those are small incremental changes or whether those are larger changes. At the same time, I think we really do need the larger systemic change in order to really have an impact.
One program the government has in place is Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR, which aims to identify end-of-life management of products as the responsibility of the producer. But this does not include the textile industry.
Right now, it's a pretty blunt instrument. It's basically total mass of given materials. Here's the bill. Now, in our case, that's currently restricted to the packaging materials, which is really not much for us. It's hang tags off the jackets, for example. That's the single biggest mass that we're putting out in the world. That should be addressed, but when we get to the question of our full products, for example, an EPR system that says, here's an incentive for you to design things in a way so that you can take them back and remanufacture them. That's the kind of more elegant policy design that we'd like to see, so that we have those clear incentives so that we know how to design this thing, and so that we're able to, for example, not pay any EPR fees if we're able to solve that design challenge of take back.
Just to clarify, When a company sells you their product, they are not responsible for what happens to that product after sale, unless they choose to be. So it's up to the business to decide if they want the responsibility to look after that product for a longer period of time.
I think if you were able to say, hey, we need EPR in the clothing industry, if you were able to implement that, that would change everything overnight. Because the reason we sell cheap, fast, poorly made quality is because it's high profit, low cost to make, and once it's out the door, it's not that brand's problem.
The question is, who is keeping us responsible? And the answer is, I think we're keeping ourselves responsible because we feel it's important. But I guess when I ask the question of, I would like consumers to keep us accountable, I guess the people we vote for and the people that we, put into positions of power, I would like them to hold everyone responsible because that's the right thing to do.
Totally. But it doesn't seem to be that yet, which is kind of...
That's crazy. I've been thinking about this for 10 years and I've never thought about that. That's really interesting. That no one's actually asked us to do this. We've asked ourselves to do it. That blows my mind.
Well, obviously, because there's no EPR in the fashion industry, there must be some programs in place to help support the people who are trying to do things sustainably.
Is there government support for companies like yourself that are doing things sustainably? Is there stuff that's in place to help elevate you as an organization?
No. No, not at the moment.
Okay then. If the government isn't going to do it, I wonder how we can take the power back into our own hands.
If we can get back to more of creating a relationship with our goods, I think it can go a long ways because then we won't be wanting to go out and buy a new thing every season or every week. Maybe we can just fix what we have. If a button falls off, don't throw it away. Put the button back on.
Not every industry has a repairability like this, where you can just easily know that everything you break, you can have someone will fix it. It's this whole opportunity, I think, that's just totally untapped.
There's all this opportunity to mend clothes, right? And I have all of this clothing that needs either mending or stains covered or anything like that. And I can't think of anyone in my friendship group who can repair clothes, anyone at all.
Stu, I think I know somebody.
What did you say, Warwick?
I know somebody.
And that someone is the very talented Courtney Neray.
Come on in.
Thank you so much. I have a bag full of things. Thank you. So that's my wife's pregnancy pants, and they've got a hole somewhere in her leg. With kids' clothes, obviously we want to pass this on either to our other children or to other children in the neighborhood. So how would you fix something like this?
There's a couple ways you could do that. You could either put a patch on top or you could cut out a panel and sew in.
Look at that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's like a new pair of pants for her. So this was my favorite sweater. And then obviously having young children, I got stains all over it.
This will do, I think, a really easy applique. So just put a patch right on top, just cover up the stain.
Could you show me how to do it myself?
Yeah, for sure. Before you press the pedal, you need to put the foot down.
Oh, so what's the foot? Oh.
So there's a little lever here that you can press down to put it in place. Go for it with the pedal.
This was actually, I don't want to speak too soon. I'm this was actually easier than I thought it would be. And then I'm going to just run over my hand.
There you go. You can stop and then you can lift the foot and pull it out and trim the seams.
Ah, so cool. This is going to be my dog walking jumper, sweatshirt. What do you guys call it? Sweater. Sorry.
Every single social and environmental crisis is a business opportunity in disguise. There are major shifts taking place in many marketplaces, and whoever can build the next generation of solutions that address things like microfibers, for example, those are all opportunities.
This is how the Australian-English relationship has always been.
My friend Sean and I are fitting a new filtration system in my washing machine.
So when I do this, I just pull that off, pull the filter out, empty the filter out, put the filter back in, put that in.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, neat.
And that's all lint that's come off.
Is this going to be really shocking in 2 weeks or whatever?
I think it's going to be really shocking after one.
We're throwing away hundreds of billions of dollars every year in single-use plastic packaging. We're seeing clothing that is less sustainable and less durable than it used to be. We're seeing all sorts of products where we're designing something for a throwaway world. That throwaway world is worth money. And what we're seeing now is opportunity that is being seized by innovators and entrepreneurs with different designs, different materials, different practices. I think it's very exciting, it's very forward-looking, and it's worth a lot of money for the right kinds of players out there.
him. That's him?
That's him.
Looks crazy.
When thinking of the next generation, nothing makes that more present in your life than having a baby. And during the making of this documentary, my wife Angie gave birth to our second child. And it's made me question what I want for my children's future, and also what my parents wanted for me and my brothers, and the world we're living in today.
We wanted you to be healthy, happy, and to be able to have choices.
And to have a prosperous life, because our parents and our parents' parents came through 2 world wars. Before we were born, nobody had a lot. Mum and I were talking about that today, strangely, is that when we were young people, we didn't have a fridge. We used to cool milk in the warm weather by putting it in cold water.
Wow. Yeah, well, lucky you lived in Scotland then, eh?
Yeah, but sure, that's in the 60s, early 60s. It was only then we started beginning to become a consumer society.
Listening to my parents and realising how recent this problem is, there really is no one else we can blame. And it feels like we have to do something quite radical to change.
I feel like when you make a documentary, it has to have like a big conclusion. Like, can we go zero waste? I don't even think we can go zero waste.
I don't think we can. I think we can definitely try to improve like our consumption of, or use of plastics, but I don't know. I think it's a big step to go zero waste.
The ultimate goal is zero waste, but you have 7 billion people on this planet. You have $120 billion of retail sold in Canada annually, and you have recycling at 11% of total capacity.
That is a lot of milk jugs. And how many of these would arrive on a daily basis here?
We could receive about 16 truckloads of these.
A day?
A day, yeah.
It's a fantasy that says that we're going to get to zero waste based on the time that it's taken to get to 11% recycle.
A recycler, for example, is designed to recycle packaging. If we get peanut butter in a jar and there's more peanut butters than plastics, there is nothing we can do with the peanut butters. If you want to join the program and you want to be an active member in your community, you have to participate correctly.
Is recycling the right thing to do? Maybe not, but it is what we have now, and we have this time clock that is ticking.
We all have a role to play. Community have a role to play, industry has a role to play, brand owner has a role to play, and government has a role to play. And if you're happy with the results, then you keep the same rules. If you're not happy with the result, you're gonna have to change.
If we are going to change this world, we stop this judgment of what people are doing is right, because it's not about being right, it's about solving the frickin' problem.
People also think that zero waste has some kind of
elitism.
Yeah, so
that's what I've noticed, and I think that that's preventing some people from reducing waste, because you go on social media and everything is clean and beautiful, and there's these beautiful, perfect people sipping out of glass straws. That's not real life.
I think I have a dislike perhaps for the term zero waste, because it does give that impression that you have to be perfect. You have to create zero, meaning nothing in terms of trash. If we can all just try to make a difference in one way, choosing one thing or maybe 2 things that you're looking to reduce, that's what's going to make a difference.
I think it gets easier when you have buy-in from your family, so everyone sort of practices it, and it just becomes a family philosophy.
In our household, it almost became competitive of how little we can actually toss out. And yes, we still toss out things, but going from 2 bins to half a bin of recycling, my husband and I will look at each other and be like, oh, it was actually a pretty good week.
A failure to live up to your expectations for yourself in one given moment doesn't mean you should give up on everything, and I think that goes for the extent to which we do things that are good for the environment. But the world is still a better place than if I just say, well, whatever. And I think that is really important to remember. You can still feel pride in any good behavior you do and focus on that behavior, even if you're never gonna have a sense of self that's exactly the way that ideally you or your society wants you to be.
I guarantee you that when you come forward with what you're doing with your family, when you're talking about birthday presents or having a zero waste birthday, it might be awkward, it might be a conversation you have to start anew, and you have to get over that people might be offended about that. But I guarantee you, when those people in your life are ready to make a switch, you'll be the first person they come to.
We can structure our life to make sustainable solutions more convenient and unsustainable solutions more inconvenient. So that's the responsibilities of consumers. Now, going with consumption, this is where businesses and governments come in. They need to make sustainable solutions more convenient for consumers. Currently, I think the problem is that a lot of the convenient choices are not sustainable, like bottled water, single-use plastics. They're very convenient, but they're not good for the environment. So how can we make convenient choices more sustainable? That's up to the business, the regulations, and the government.
This Western worldview and the Western legal system had roots that actually were quite similar to Indigenous worldviews in Europe that looked at clan traditions and taking care of the community. And so that really is the most foremost thing that I recommend, is this idea of taking care of community and families so that we're actually strengthening each other.
Your documentary is about to bring conversation to people. It's not to make something right or wrong. It's about to share that there's a giant problem out there. And the way we solve this problem is looking at it differently than making someone wrong, because as soon as you make someone wrong, they have to defend themselves. So then we are stopped.
What I've learned on this journey is it's less about me raising my kids to be perfect embodiments of zero waste, and it's more about federal government making big changes to protect the environment and therefore protect the lives of us and everyone around the world. And so then, if industry and government hold the keys to greater change, then it's up to us to hold them and the companies we work for accountable. Economic growth and the environment do not go hand in hand. And sure, in a capitalist society, we all want riches and comfort, but if we choose to do that through a convenient manner, we might not have a future in 7 generations. I suppose the documentary from my point of view is me trying to work out what I should leave my kids. So for your generation, it's clear. You want to leave us with financial security. What would be your advice for me and my brothers to leave our kids when we pass on?
Your children, you've got to try and help them to go back maybe to, but not pre-war conditions, but certainly appreciate what they have.
I think awareness, a huge awareness of what's going on, to be proactive and have a voice and show children where things come from. How did it get to where it is today? But we need to be aware of what we're doing to the environment and to treasure what we've got, because their next generation, they have the knock-on effect from that. I think we're creatures of convenience. I think definitely creatures of convenience, whatever makes it easy and quick. And it's not always easy and quick is the right answer.
So what's the answer? What can we do? That's a hard one, isn't it? I think unconsciously, without even realizing it, we've prioritized convenience over life. I mean, it's so complex. How many people are involved and how many people we rely on to make the right decisions for our families. Sometimes it feels like an impossible task, but it's not impossible. It's inconvenient. And the most important thing we can do for our children, from my perspective, is to love, respect, and care for this place, like 7 generations did before us. So then perhaps we can view inconvenience as an act of love, rather than just simply something we don't feel like doing. And then we will become creatures of this land, rather than creatures of convenience.